Hello, I'm Mary Spicer, and thank you for joining me for this episode of Behind Fashion. In this unprecedented time, the fashion industry, like so many other industries, is in distress. People around the world have joined together to demand the social and racial justice that we all deserve, and no industry is exempt, and the hard work will continue. I created this series so that we could support one another as we move forward in the new fashion landscape in a thoughtful and collaborative manner. Over the next few weeks, I'm going to introduce you to some wonderful people behind the scenes in fashion, directors, designers, producers, and so many more. During this webinar, I will be taking questions from the audience. If you are watching live or at a later date, you can certainly email me your questions, mary@jamproductionsco.com. With a virus that discourages the interaction of people and the touching of clothing, what does the future hold for the fashion industry? And how are our roles changing? I look forward to collaborating and sharing our ideas and journeys as we move forward in this new world. Today, it is my great pleasure to introduce all of you to Mr. Patrick Mueller of Control Group Productions. Patrick was born and raised in Colorado, and he started dancing in college, designing his own major in performance arts at Pomona College in California. In 2002, Patrick moved to New York and joined Troika Ranch Dance Theater, a leading live interactive technologies dance company using sound, video, and lighting that is created or triggered by the dancers on the stage. He spent a year on a graduate fellowship at Ohio State University, studying theater, sculpture, and the German language. After that, he crossed the pond to work with a German company called Mancopy Dance. And there he worked with Ben Rapey, an award-winning choreographer and dancer. In 2008, Patrick returned to Colorado, founding Control Group Productions and the Packing House Center for the Arts. In 2011, this center was replaced with Workspace Denver. In 2011, Patrick also took a break to go to Virginia, where he attended Hollins University Graduate School, earning his master's in fine arts in dance composition and theory. While there, he worked closely with Tommy DeFrance, who is a Duke University dance program professor, John Jaspers, the founder of the John Jaspers Projects and Studio located in Manhattan, as well as Elizabeth Zimmer, who was the dance editor for the Village Voice for over 20 years, as well as many other other publications. Ooh, I am a production person. Patrick taught at the formerly known Dance Space Center, now Gibney Dance, in Manhattan, Red Rocks Community College, Naropa University, Colorado Conservatory of Dance, the Open Dance Project in Houston, Texas, Joffrey Summer Intensive in Denver, Dance Initiative in Carbondale, Colorado. He also performed in 2016's Sweet and Lucky, which sold out for a 12-week run of immersive performance scenes in a 16,000 square foot warehouse in Denver, Colorado. Patrick choreographed 2016's Tiny Utopias, a commissioned dance theater work for Open Dance Project in Houston, creating dance based on queer futurity theory and resistance movements in the arts and culture from the 60s to the 80s. He choreographed 2017's The Wild Party, an immersive musical by Off Center at the Denver Center for the Performing Arts, creating dance sequences and off-script activities for over 200 guests. He co-directed and performed 2017's Roush, an outdoor immersive odyssey with Catamounts Theater Company out of Boulder, Colorado. He directed 2017's Never Home, presented in partnership with the Museum of Contemporary Art Denver. Denver Home was a nomadic site work turned media depiction of refugee travel experiences into a journey through multiple local sites. In 2018, he directed Solace, an intimate, immersive live experience turned into experimental and experiential film. 2019's Aggregate Immateriality, an immersive journey through 15,000 square feet of catacombs created in the basement of an abandoned North Denver slaughterhouse. In 2020, he directed The End, a bus tour of the apocalypse through Denver, which has been postponed. Also this year, he directed Cavalcade, a multi-site live drive-in, also postponed. Patrick offers consultations for immersive outdoor productions, audience mobile event structures, immersive performance tactics, and location scouting. Thank you, Patrick. So nice to see you. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Mary. It's lovely to be here.
That is a lot to go through. And can I just say, well, first of all, cheers to all of that. I see you got your mug.
Uh-huh.
Because you're in Denver, so I dropped it off. Wow, these are things that really, what people would say is they're not in our wheelhouse. We work together quite often. We'll get into that a little bit more later. But it's a whole new world. It's a whole new world, and you're just such a big person in the scene here in Denver, Colorado. And before we get into it, I do want to just step back for a quick second. With the pandemic and everything, how are you and your family doing at this time?
All things considered, we are fine. I still have employment. Our 6-year-old has a wonderful full-time homeroom teacher in my wife. She's not always ecstatic about that role, but it's lovely that, yeah, her work basically disappeared. She's on unemployment, and we're managing fairly smoothly so far on that level. He's hyperactive and just super excited about friends and outdoors, and that has been really hard to not be in school, to not have play dates. But yeah, I think, in terms of a situation to weather a pandemic, we're doing okay. We're doing fine.
Oh, that's really great. And when I just have to say a quick story. I know I keep going off topic, but when I dropped off the mug, I got out of the car and I was like, what is that sound? And it took a couple times, and I realized, is that a rooster? It was a rooster.
We are in a quiet little corner in North Lakewood that sometimes you hear Colfax traffic and sometimes you hear roosters, and there are also, we get duck eggs from the same house across the street that has the rooster, and every once in a while I get to see, I think they have a goat. It's one of the original farm properties out here.
That was amazing. You don't hear that. Not really. I know that there's like urban farming and things, but, and to close it out, it was a shock. I got out and I just didn't know what was going on. I was like, am I near the zoo? I'm nowhere near the zoo. What is that sound? Well, so to go over everything that I was saying, it's a lot, but you toured overseas and danced with Danish and German performance artists and companies. Can you tell me a little bit about who they are that you worked with and the types of performances that you were doing?
Yeah, both in New York, and then for a couple of years in Europe, I was working with independent small companies. I think in every case they were 3 to 5 company members, yeah, it was lovely particularly in Europe, but also with Troika Ranch, we did a lot of sort of short run tours, residencies in different cities in New England or around Europe. We toured to the Middle East, to Mexico, and the dance spectrum has sort of expanded into a pretty serious overlap with theater that in Europe is just called performance at this point, or contemporary performance, that is usually movement driven, which makes it lovely in terms of multilingual touring. But is getting beyond what you think of as dance in terms of a certain lyricism of movement, choreographed to music. That happens too in the work that I was doing with these artists.
Right.
But a much more expanded vocabulary as well, into movement theater and physical theater.
Well, so in the opening, I just have to go to this. There is, let's say, Troika Ranch, where it's a leading live interactive technologies dance company. And
Yeah.
I imagine when I said it, sound, video, lighting, it's triggered by the dancers on the stage. Can you just explain that a little bit more? I'm sorry, I am in over my head on that.
Yeah. I think a simple example illustrates this quite well. There is a piece called Ren Rien that we would wear elbow pads and knee pads, just sleeves, with a little filament sensor. And what it does, sensors or digital sensors just track some sort of change of state, and the sensor tracks an angle change. And so if my arm is straight, it's quiet, and as I bend my arm, it goes from a drizzle to a downpour in the sound score, that you hear rain in the music. And it's completely tied to the movement versus, standard choreography where you have either recorded, or if you're very lucky, live sound being played by musicians, where, you meet in the middle in terms of the timing, in terms of the nuance of delivery. And with this, you have this incredible control that you're actually, as you are executing the movement, that has its own, visual and kinesthetic aesthetic that's at play. You're actively playing the sound score as a musician without needing the skills of being a musician.
And then another company that you worked with in Germany, I thought was very interesting. We had spoken before, and you said Man Copy is it's a play on the word company. They just rearranged the letters. I forget what that's called. But Man Copy. Now, so did you do the same type of thing with them in Germany, or are they a different type of dance performance?
Two different companies. Man Copy is was based in Copenhagen at that time, is now actually based in Lebanon most of the time. I think that's where Jens Bjerregaard lives. And he's frequently in Denmark, but I think is working from the Middle East. And then separate from that, Ben Riepe in Germany. And I think they sort of define lovely sort of spectrums of work that I was engaged in Europe. That on the one hand, Man Copy is definitively contemporary dance with lovely sort of dance theater scenes as well. But the manner of physicality is very much in a dance technique structure. And with Ben, his work had moments of very lovely, exquisite dancing, had extreme athletic physicality, and then had, very simple, like a scene where we stood still for about 3 or 4 minutes, and the lights did the choreography. And a lovely scene set to a bombastic Ennio Morricone theme from a spaghetti Western, where we're as far from the audience as possible against the back wall, doing these like tiny little things that, I think it looks like many different things, but the image that I was always working with is a bas relief melting slowly, like some like Michelangelo, carving that's just like that pieces are falling off. And it was very gestural and nuanced and sort of petite.
Wow. That's amazing. And so you took all of that knowledge and you decided to come back to Colorado and start Control Group Productions. And you also opened the Packing House Center for the Arts. Can you go into that a little bit? How it all came about and what you're doing with that? It's just kind of my wheelhouse.
So our company is now 11 years old, and our first 5 years we ran 2 different venues, first the Packing House and then Workspace Denver. And our goal with that was to have a space that we rehearsed in and then performed. And by having it be a single location, we could work site specifically, we could build out, I guess at Workspace we started doing pretty extravagant sets that would take over the whole space for a month. But it allowed us to to have the work exist in a really definitive context, so that it wasn't, you know, I think most touring concert dance, you assume a, you know, a 35 by 50 foot clear space. Maybe you bring some set with you, but you need to be able to pack it all up, put it in a truck, get to the next location, and unpack it over a short week of tech rehearsals and then perform it. And that is a lovely model, but it gets really thin in terms of getting beyond just the bodies and a usually like black curtained room. And so sort of from the beginning, we were using what were set up as black box venues, with a sort of a site specific sensibility. And then in 2013, we took audience on a bus tour through multiple outdoor sites and realized that there was theater, that there were venues all around us, and that it was really, that there was something really enlivening about just getting out into the world and having the art happen, sometimes in very dynamic public space where there's circumstantial viewers, that, you know, people who didn't buy a ticket or know that this was happening, who are just walking through, and then an opportunity to use just incredible, you know, outdoor and also found indoor spaces across Denver. And so for the last 5 years, we've really been itinerant. We don't have a home. This is our studio here, out at my home in Lakewood, where we rehearse about half of each work, and then we move into the space that we've secured for it to be performed in.
Right. And that kind of adds to the experience. You know, the venue's changing. It's not going to be the same. Sometimes it's indoors, sometimes it's outdoors. And I know that, I'm sure people are wondering why I brought you onto a fashion show. But you worked with me on High Style, and that was a fashion, I think that was one of the last shows before everything closed down. It was an immersion of fashion, social justice, our environmental and conscious decisions as way of purchasing things. Our designers, Pact and Kato Momalu, are both sustainable fabrics, using best practices. So we definitely brought you and your team in. And so when I hear companies now that we're here are looking for ideas to promote their brands, fashion shows, etc., they're looking to engage with their audience. They have to get creative. They have to do things that are new. And I'm like, that's control group. I mean, that's what we're doing. And so can you explain how you start your process when collaborating with companies who are looking for a new direction? How do you work with them in that manner?
Yeah. I mean, I think in our own work and in our sort of consulting work that's really not about our artistic voice. In both places, we take everything as the collaboration, and that we work much less from like some grandiose vision of an amazing art piece, and instead we see as part of the artistic process the conversation about what's the purpose of this event, and then what context does it need to achieve that purpose, what elements does it need to achieve that purpose. And so that, I mean, ideally we're finding a site and an advertising structure and a way that the audience is engaged once they arrive that's all about the core purpose, whether it's presenting fashion or presenting one of our works, or hosting workshops, or conversation, panels and seminars. And I think
sorry, I was just jumping in because my brain immediately went, that's amazing. That's why we work with you. Was the first thing you said was, what is it that the brand or the company that has approached you is trying to achieve, and how can you work towards that? Because I think quite often a lot of people say, oh, this is the newest, latest thing. I'm just waiting to do it. If somebody hires me, I'm going to do that no matter who that company is. And I think it just speaks volumes of control group that you don't need to have, I mean, you have loads of things in your pockets, I'm sure, but you will go off of what is it that they're trying to achieve and what's the best way to do it.
Yeah, I think there's, there's always, part of the job is, I mean, if you're directing this fashion show, I need to climb into your head a little bit. But more than that, we have this thing that's floating between us that's the event and the project that we're working on. And, I think my goal in anything that I'm doing, and I think this gets into like making coffee in the kitchen or, reading a book with Levi, is the sort of, how are we finding creative problem solving instead of just sort of, this is the thing, if it doesn't work, we cut off this piece, and we jam it in.
Right.
And so, thinking of, in our work together with High Style, I was collaborating with that space pretty intensely to work around HVAC, to work around just the very live architecture, the fact that we didn't have an elevated runway. And that was just lighting, but it was, it still was not just, okay,
just lighting.
Here's the order, here's the invoice, we deliver the product. It really needed that dialogue and understanding. This spot is going to need highlights. We aren't set up to highlight every point along the runway. And yeah, so finding, both hearing from you, me being able to tell you, this spot's impossible because there's an HVAC that hangs 8 feet over the models' heads. That becomes, I think, just part of the art making and the production process.
And I love working with you because no matter what I said, I like to do interesting things. People that go to the shows, they know they're going to get an interesting show. You're just like, oh, okay, well, let's figure out how to do that. And it wasn't, why would you do that? That's not what people normally do, or, just trying to fit it in there. You are very open and can find creative solutions, and just a joy to work with, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel like that, that mentality always, it runs into endpoints that are impenetrable sometimes. But it usually ends us up with something that's bigger than we imagine, that's more grandiose, more replete than if we just imagined it and then built it based on the vision.
Right.
So. Well,
and Control Group, you're a nonprofit, is that correct?
We are.
Okay, and you've presented over 100 projects by yourself, touring companies, local artists, and this year you had grown to 20 collaborating artists, I believe. And both of your performances, as I said in the opening, The End and Cavalcade, were postponed. Can you tell me a bit about what happened with each of them, what those shows were, how they were postponed? Go into that a little bit.
Yeah, it's been a tough couple months. And I don't know. Yeah, lots of learning along the way. The End is a project that we've been sort of dreaming on since the show I mentioned in 2013, where we hired a bus and drove the audience around. We realized that was a really exciting structure, and one that we had not mined half of the excellent opportunities available in it. And so I think the moment that we closed that show, I said, as soon as we can put another zero in a production budget, we will do this again. And that's sort of what we've done. I mean, we've been on a pretty amazing growth trajectory over the last 5 years. And so just over, about a year and a half ago, we decided that we were going to do this in 2020. And the vision is a bus that is driving an audience through Denver as if Denver is mid-apocalypse. And sort of, part of it was fun and sci-fi, and some sort of humorous notes. Like we had this conceit that that when you are on the bus, it's a conflation of a band on tour, a political campaign, and an apocalypse survivor community, and that we are sort of all three at once. And we got to, I think it was by March 15th that we were looking in the face the fact that even if things got better pretty quickly, first that there was a huge amount of risk. There was just an extreme uncertainty. We weren't sure whether we'd be able to open the show if we continued to work on it. And
Is that with the end or Cavalcade?
that's with the end.
Okay, right.
And so
So that really was at the very beginning.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, we realized that, you know, regardless of whether we wanted to keep working on it, working over Zoom on a project that was really ready to be getting out into its sites, and, you know, the stay-at-home order, you know, we were really clear, we're not going to do anything illicit right now, even if we could functionally keep people safe. We simply, you know, we often enter gray areas where we either are transgressing technicalities of the law, or we are just, there's not quite a policy or regulation that applies to the weird activities that we do. We decided in this context that we really were following the letter of the stay-at-home order, and that we needed to put the end on hold.
Right.
And so we just sort of put the project on ice and are looking to see when it can come back. But we were set up to run a production. We had personnel hired. We had, you know, we were capitalized for an event that to open in June, and we did a good amount of consensus decision making over the last couple months. Often it's just me making decisions, or our two associate directors, sort of the three of us guiding the organization. And with this one, we decided really that, you know, our main goal is to keep these artists working and you know, both, you know, paid and practicing their art.
Right.
And so we sat down with everybody, asked if they wanted to do an ad hoc project that we were at that point totally unsure whether it would ever see the light of day. And everybody said yes. And so we rehearsed over Zoom for 6 weeks. We looked at a May 22nd opening when we thought that the whole state was coming out of stay at home when Polis made his announcement. We pushed that back to June 5th. And so that, I don't think I've marked that clearly in this long monologue. This now is the show Cavalcade, which was much more modest in scope than the end, and was really focused on simple joys and on a safe way of bringing people out of isolation in the stay-at-home orders.
Yeah.
And and finding a way of coming back into, like,
had everybody on a pause, right?
Yeah, and that I'm very happy that we put that away, because that's still a non-starter, psychologically as well as you know, legally, and for sure everything that the CDC is saying. I would not get on the bus with those people, and I sure wouldn't invite anybody else to get on there right now.
Right. And so then you had Cavalcade, and that was like a self-tour,
Mm-hmm.
and it was definitely safe, and then you decided to postpone that one as well.
And so what we ran into with that is we were working in some of the gray space that is we've worked in very often, in terms of using public parks as sites. And we always check in with Denver Parks and Rec, and every time in the past we've been told that under a certain number of people that there's really not an issue. And we made the decision to go even a step further, not have the audience enter the park at all, have them stay in their vehicles, which happened to be on different, you know, the parking lots were not Parks and Rec property in the sites that we were looking at. But we got, you know, we got deeper and deeper into the permitting process there and at an arts and venues site. And I finally got just a very blanket statement that any organized activity at a Denver park is not possible. And at that point we were into early June, and the protest movement was through its first weekend and clearly picking up steam. And so, I mean, as soon as that happened, we canceled a week of activities in order for several of our company to participate in the protests, for all of us to just create space and and lend focus instead of distracting in any way.
Right.
But we got to the end of that week, and the protest movement is still happily, excitingly, moving forward, and not sort of running out of oxygen the way that a lot of news cycles do in normal times.
Right.
And we, based on that and our desire to just stay as, you know, in a listening and participating role, and not be doing other things that are, that, you know, that really are not nearly as relevant now that the protests have gotten people out of their homes, have brought them together into community for a much deeper and more important purpose than we were proposing. It felt, you know, that it was much less exciting to actually experience this event in this moment, and really didn't feel like the thing to be doing. It didn't feel like a time for us to be making an artistic statement. And we were facing a weekend of totally overhauling 2 of our 5 sites to get them off of Denver City Park property, and just decided it was not the right moment.
Yeah, and I have to say that is what I'm talking about when I open the show. We have to work together in a thoughtful and meaningful way. There are a lot of changes happening, a lot of changes going on. We've got to work together, and I have to tell you, those are some tough decisions you made. There are many things needed, and I think they were the right decisions, and I think it's wonderful. So I know that I purchased tickets to Cavalcade, and I just donated it. I said, that's fine. This is also very important. But is there a way that we can help Control Group? Do you have a way for us to donate?
Yeah, we do. We're a nonprofit, and we are a member of Colorado Gives, which is run through the Community First Foundation. I think the easiest way to find us is controlgroupproductions.org/donate. Yeah,
because I know that you were working with, I did read in the end, and I'm going to kind of read it off this. You involved social engagement with street artists and formerly homeless housing insecure individuals, consulting around accessibility and emergency preparedness. And that's very telling of what is happening today. And I thank you so much for all of your difficult decisions. And I can't wait to see what you guys do in 2021. Not sooner. I just love it. I was excited, but as you were saying, and as is correct, there are many things going on, and this is so very important to make space.
Yeah, it is an increasingly complex and uncertain world. And yeah, I'm excited that I get to navigate it from this position of being an artist and finding, hopefully, I mean, you know, the number of responses that we've gotten from, but both for, you know, when we first announced the event, just a lot of excitement of like, a thing to do, something to get me out of my house. Oh my God, theater still exists. And then hearing just, a lot of supportive statements. I mean, similar to the one that you sent me right after we canceled, that, yeah, it's lovely to know that we are doing something that, when the time is right, when we can actually align the variables in this time of incredible uncertainty, that it's doing something important for people.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and taking the time. I know you've had a difficult couple of weeks, and I truly appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mary.
Bye. And we can all make donations to controlgroupproductions.org/donate. It's very easy to find. It's a big button on there. I went there to see it. Thank you all for attending this week's Fashion Week series. That was Patrick Mueller with Control Group Productions. You can find Control Group on Facebook, Control Group Productions, Instagram @Control Group Productions, and Vimeo, vimeo.com/Control Group Productions. Next week, I will be joined by fashion show producer and president of the Actors Equity Foundation, Judith Rice. Judith Rice of Judith Rice and Associates. See you all next week, Monday, June 24th, 10 a.m. Mountain Time, noon on the East Coast, 9 a.m. on the West Coast, and 5 p.m. British Summer Time. Thank you all so much and have a wonderful week.